My guest tonight from my immediate left, Dr. Franklin Odro, who is Deputy Director and Head of Research for CDD Ghana. Next to him is Dr. Justice Baule, who is Senior Lecturer and Head of the Department of Public Administration and Health Sciences Management, University of Ghana Business School. Far left is Dr. Eric Odrosa, who is Dean of Graduate Studies and Research, the Institute of Local Government Studies. Gentlemen, important as we get into election 2016. Let's look at these promises. Are these promises the sort of promises that actually tackle the issues that Ghanaians deem as very important as we get to the elections?
Well, thank you, and good evening to your viewers and listeners as well. First of all, I think let's put this in a context that there are different segments of the voting population that political parties are going to try and win votes. People expect differently from different things from politicians, and therefore there are certain responses and promises that political actors, politicians will make that will respond to certain segment of the voting population. The question really is, do those people who those promises appeal to them really understand and appreciate, and can they interrogate?
Yes, we'll get to that bit.
Yes,
but yes. I just would want you to tell me, so far, based on the promises that have been made, do they tackle? I mean, what segments of the expectations do they, solve, for instance?
Well, I mean, and again, let's look at this. These promises that are coming up are being made at certain communities, certain localities, and certain peculiar problems that people in those communities and localities feel. What I think they are trying to respond to is trying to appeal to communities who have certain different needs at a particular point in time, without necessarily locating those kind of promises within the national question in terms of what we need to address.
Well, we've had a one district, one factory policy, one constituency, $1 million from the NPP. These are national in perspective, aren't they?
Yeah, but they come from a response to certain demand from a certain constituency, and then it's sort of contextualized nationally. But the point I'm trying to say is that they are responding to a need that people want. That people want jobs. And of course, if you take a look at the CDD pre-election survey, the number one interest of voters, potential voters, was unemployment. They want any future government to tackle unemployment. So if someone talked about one district, one factory, obviously the person is responding to unemployment question, and therefore trying to appeal to that segment of population that would want to see jobs. And so, in a way, those promises are sort of trying to respond to a national problem, but it also try to respond to a peculiar community problem. As to whether they can be solved or not, that's a different question that
exactly.
We'll to.
But we'll definitely get to as to whether they can be solved or not. But let me just find out from, Dr. Odrosa, also his take on this. Do you think these promises meet, or these promises are addressing the needs of Ghanaians?
Yes and no. Before these promises are made, what I was expecting to hear from the political parties or those making these promises are that, one, we have undertaken empirical research, that we have established this as a gap or a problem. This is how we intend resolving them. But in most cases, they come out with these promises at the spur of the moment on platforms to meet the request of the people. That I have visited this place and the people said they need this. That is not the way to go. And if you look at it from that angle, then I would say that it cannot be implemented. But if you ask me whether it meets the needs of the people, they tell the people what the people want to hear. And that is, for me, a challenge. You don't tell them what they want to hear. You tell them what you think the problem is on the basis of empirical research.
But the politicians will tell you that, look, we have been researching. Before we get into any constituency or any town, we research, we know their problems. And so based on that, we make these promises. These are things they know. You've had Anakufado, for instance, say that, we want to help improve agriculture in the north. And as a result, we're coming in with a one dam, one village policy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but I would expect them to hammer on their research. What kind of research did they do? And after the research, what were the findings? What were the outcome? Convince the people for them to come to accept that this is a challenge. That is what we call the development connection. Normally there is a disconnection. We think that they need this, but apparently they may not need it. So we should stop doing promises on the basis of spur of the moment or contingency promises, what I would call contingency promises. Let us try and make promises on the basis of research. And this research, we should tell the people, we should let them know what we did to establish those gaps. Else, we'll go round making these promises, and when it comes to implementation, we're going to face challenges. Remember, there's a social contract, but the social contract is not working in this country. How many people have been able to take governments to court for failure to honor their manifesto promises?
Okay. Let me get to Dr. Baole and find out, you think that these promises are not born out of research?
Well, I don't have evidence to suggest that, but let me just say good evening to your listeners and viewers. I don't have evidence to suggest that the promises that are being made are not born out of evidence, research evidence. Sometimes it suggests that this is what is happening. For example, if somebody stood on a campaign platform or drove through a village and got to that village and begins to say things that responds to what they have seen on the way or what the people have told them, it will be difficult to agree that, this has been done, it's born out of research. But if you have ever traveled the length and breadth of Ghana, which I have the opportunity to do once every year, you will get to know that the challenges that the people face, on the surface of it, you should be able to appreciate what people go through. For example, you go through a village that has some dam, right, and you find women fetching water from the dam with buckets to water plants. Crops that they are trying to. So you find that when I see these, I say these are clear problems that there is a problem to be fixed. So I don't think that it is entirely wrong to go around the country, see things, and make promises that you want to fix them. What I think is the problem, if you ask me, is that if I were to come to your house and find out that you don't have electricity, and I say I'll provide you with electricity, have I thought how much the electricity is going to cost? And have I thought through whether or not I'll be able to raise that kind of money that I'm making a promise on? Don't forget that when you make promises like we do in Ghana, the day of reckoning will come when the people would be expecting that you deliver on those promises. And if you cannot deliver on them, you would have made the promises in vain. Okay. So I don't think it's wrong to make promises. If you ask me whether or not these promises are even too much, I say no. I think that
you think the promises are
okay. I think the Ghanaian political parties are being extremely lazy.
They're not promising enough?
They are not promising enough.
Oh, okay.
They are not promising enough. When I was coming, maybe we'll go deeper into this. When I was coming, a document that I love so much, Nkrumah's 7-year development plan. And if you take Nkrumah's 7 years development plan and you look at the things that are cataloged in there are 14 chapters of this document, and each of the chapters tackle a major issue. And these are said to be plans that Nkrumah had to execute in 7 years.
But of course, somebody would argue that the the political parties are yet to come out with their manifestos. Apart from the Progressive People's Party, we are yet to see the manifestos. And so until the manifestos come out, you wouldn't have lots of these promises. When they come out with the manifestos, and then you get to know what they intend to do.
Honestly, if there's any political party that has anything in their yet to be adored manifesto and it's not been made known yet, then it doesn't exist. If you ask me, I'll tell you. Because there's no way you would have a document, something in a document, and you will have the patience not to speak it when you meet people who are yearning to hear from you. You will speak it. So if you want to push me to the wall, I will tell you that anything you would have heard the politicians talk about now are the things that are in their manifestos.
So you doubt
it will come out,
but some of these things might be captured in their manifestos.
Yep.
And there are other things that they haven't said yet because they are waiting. Because you've heard the NPP say, for instance, they want to wait. Okay, they want to wait. I mean,
perhaps
you've heard them say, for instance, that whenever they come out with ideas, they're stealing. So they're waiting for the NDC to.
Well, they might just wait until the elections are over.
They say they launch it on the 8th of October.
Well, let's see what happens. But the truth is that if political parties think that Ghana needs to develop, then I think they should promise more. And what we have to do as citizens is to hold them to those promises when they make.
I'll get back to that bit. I'll get back to that bit. But you say some of the promises are not born out of research. What are some of those promises that you can pinpoint and say, well, this wasn't research and it was just made?
Well, as I said I do not have evidence to suggest that some of the promises are made out of.
But you say listening to them, you see.
Yeah, sometimes you listen to them.
Promises.
Exactly.
So, for instance, which promise would you say you just made?
I'm not sure which one is the latest. Maybe I hear there's one that says one fisherman, one sea.
No. That's more like the Ghanaian making making a joke of all of these promises. But talking about research, Dr. Odrosa, and I've heard Dr. Ibrahim Mahama say, for instance, when he promised school feeding in 2000, he was on his campaign tour and saw a young man carrying yam, and firewood to school, and he said, but if I was fed in the 60s. During the Nkrumah regime, why can't I do so? So immediately he says, I want to introduce school feeding. He might not have done a lot of research at the time, but he realized there was a problem. He had to solve it, and he believed this was the way to solve it. So sometimes, yes, the problems do exist. You have to solve them, and by so doing, you make these promises. When you are voted into office, or if you're voted into office, then you come out with a clear policy on how to implement it.
The way to go about some of these things is that, one, do consultation. You have identified the problem. How many of these political parties we have in this country does consultation before they come out with their manifestos?
I do not know. Do you know?
They don't. I'm yet.
You have that. You know that for a fact.
I'm yet to see any of the political
There's
parties.
Been a listening tour before. They tell you. I've heard.
Listening tour for what?
I mean, the NPP's flag bearer prior to the 2012 campaign went on a listening tour. He said he wanted to hear what Ghanaians wanted captured in the manifesto. He was consulting all Ghanaians before coming up with his plans. I've heard the director of elections for the CPP, James Kwabena Bonfe, saying that, well, they are not just telling Ghanaians what they will do, but they are telling Ghanaians what Ghanaians are asking them to do. So that's something of consultation.
Got a consultation.
Yes, they say they're consulting with Ghanaians.
So why don't they release their manifesto then, if you have consulted widely?
They argue that what they're doing is their manifesto. They're telling you what they intend to do.
Not at all. If I have my wish, I would say that politicians can develop their manifestos, but a party that would win elections should put together the manifestos of all the other political parties, select the ones that are good for Ghana and implement. The best manifesto is a consolidated manifesto, because you can't have all the ideas to develop Ghana. You can have people having some of the ideas. So if you say that one party will steal my ideas, it doesn't speak well. For me, I think we should do consultation. If you do the consultation, you win elections. Pick what is good from the other parties' manifestos, incorporate it in your manifesto, modify it, and implement it. At the end of the day, it is what is good for Ghana that we want. It's not what is good for a political party. So let us go along those lines and stop this business of it is my idea. If it is your idea and it is good for Ghana, so be it. We want ideas that are good for Ghana. So I'm looking out for a consolidated manifesto from the winning political party to implement, so that Ghana can move from one level to the other.
Well, many have talked about a national development plan, 40 years plan, and you tell us how you intend doing that. But let me get to Dr. Odro. Now, let me just find out, from you, are you concerned, are you worried that 3 months to the elections, the main political parties are not releasing their manifesto? The NDC says we're thinking of releasing the manifesto, on 17th September. So that's when they intend to do so. The MPP says 8th September.
Well, first of all, permit me to take advantage of this question to comment a bit about earlier comments, and here I'll probably differ a little bit from my colleague, a good friend and senior, Dr. Osai, in terms of manifesto. Where are they? I do think that the manifestos are there. They're already talking about that, and we've become so fixated about a document called manifesto. But what is manifesto? Manifesto is sort of a document that has ideas and how you want to achieve those ideas. Already, all the political parties, especially the 4 or 5 or so, are talking about what they want to do. And I think those are the manifesto that we're talking about. Except that we want to wait and see a documented, printed book and say, this is my manifesto. So for me, I think it's already there. We are hearing, infrastructure. from the ruling party that we focus on infrastructure development, and we think that that is the basis for us to progress. So I expect that is how they want to prosecute the agenda if they win. We are hearing that we want to create employment, and so one of the ways of creating jobs, employment, is to do what? One district, one factory, and to provide $1 million per constituency. We are hearing that one of the ways to target corruption is to separate, to set up an independent. Those things are already being talked about, and we are beginning to question them. What we are doing today is even questioning the kind of promises and campaign manifesto, in my view, that are being talked about.
Okay.
So I think we shouldn't be. I mean, it's good. It's a good practice, good democratic practice, if political parties can holistic in a holistic manner outdoor their comprehensive program 4 months, 5 months, 6 months ahead of election. But if you go back to the past elections, we haven't had any consistent period in which they sometimes it comes a month or 2 months to elections. So I'm not so much worried about that. And besides, we haven't enshrined in our electoral laws that by a certain day you have to put. And again, let me put this: according to electoral commission's rules, and if you interpret their rules, the only time that campaign formally starts is when you have filed your nomination and accepted. So a lot of things that are going on now are sort of pre-campaign.
So we're giving them undue pressure to release their manifestos when in effect they've not even filed their nominations.
Well, yeah. So I mean, some may probably not contest. You never know. So I think that it's good to talk about it. And then for me, as a democracy and good governance promoter, it would be good if we can have a standardized way of all the parties, coming out, so that we can interrogate them, fairly and question each other's issues. I mean, 2012 was a little bit better than this year, in my view, in terms of, even if you take education as an example, the way the debate, 3 years, 4 years, free
and progressively
progress, and so it sort of created space for people to really interrogate and say, can this be done or not? If you take one-time premium for national health insurance,
that was in 2008.
That also was debated extensively in terms of how this can be achieved. So I think that it's good if we have them, but already the parties are talking about them. And again, but I just also want to add, if you permit me,
go ahead,
about the research part that Dr. Ojo, my namesake, talked about. It is absolutely important. I think, as a researcher, I think that political parties should design their programs, messages based on empirical research.
Well, they say they've done their research. If you ask them, they say, I have done my research.
I'm sure that's what they will tell you. Yeah, and of course.
Do you have anything to the contrary?
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay.
But I do suspect that they probably rely on existing
secondary data
to inform whatever they want to do. But I also want to say that so much about these promises, manifestos, to me is much more about the how and when, rather than the what. The what problem, what we need, I think we know. We need to strengthen democratic governance. We need to enhance transparency and accountability. We need to modernize our agriculture. We need to improve healthcare.
So you're talking about the how. How do we do all these things? And exactly the point. So far, the promises that you have heard, do they tackle the how?
And that is the problem.
Tell you how we intend to deal with these challenges?
That is the problem in this campaign. That all the promises that we're talking about, $1 million per constituency, how are you going to generate that? I haven't heard a lot more on that. That probably we're going to tax purple, or we're going to take it from our oil and gas, or probably going to add 2.5 value, another 2% on. I haven't heard. I'm going to provide 1 meter. Is it 1 meter?
One house. They say that's not a promise.
Okay, so
they said the president was on a campaign, and somebody said, "Oh, the people complain," and he said, "Oh, I have done this for you." So it's more like governance is a continuous process. So he's just asked them that they'll be giving, and that's the end of it. It's not something he would do if he elected into office. He's doing it right now.
Okay, now that is good. It's good we have this clarification. But in many of those, messages that have come, we are hearing very little of the how and the when, and that is why, as we progress in our democratic process, we need to do a lot more education of citizens and voters for them to question and query these political actors. Otherwise, they're going to take it for granted.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Odro. But let me get to you, Dr. Baule, and I just would want to establish something. Maybe any of you could take this, because this is one question that I know might generate some bit of controversy, but do we know how voters take these promises? Any of you has a research or has read any research that looks at how voters take these promises and whether indeed they influence the choices that voters make at the end of the day?
Well, I've not cited any research evidence, and I have not conducted any myself. I have read some survey reports that seeks to ask voters what their key concerns would be, or what they would want governments to deal with. And in those that survey report, education, health, and employment topped in all the regions of Ghana. So I tend to believe that voters would be listening and wanting to hear things that fit into these things that they consider important. But it is also important to say that there are huge variations across Ghana, and therefore what would appeal to one group of people will not appeal to another group of people. For example, one village, one dam, what would that mean to people in Elmina? Nothing. What will what other promises are made? For people who are in Accra who already have. There's
a talk of creating another region out of the Western region.
Yes, exactly.
And that's for
exactly. What would that mean to somebody who is in Greater Accra? Probably not important, right? If you went to we talk about 1 million per district.
Per constituency.
Sorry, per constituency. I think that might be an interest that would be of interest to a lot of people. But if I were in a village somewhere and you told me 1 million per my constituency, I'll ask myself the question: what has happened to this Assembly Common Fund that I have received continuously?
That will take us to the next angle of the discussion when we get to the feasibility of those policies. Dr. Franklin has raised the how. And whether they are indeed feasible. I'll get to it. But Dr. Odro, do you have you read anything that tells you, how these promises influence voters' choices at the end of the day?
The closest I have come is a document I read, which indicates that the two big political parties in this country, NPP and NDC, can safely gain 40% of the qualified voters. So we have this 20%, so NPP 40%, NDC 40%. We have this floating voters of 20% for those smaller parties and those who may want to vote on the basis of manifesto promises. So that document is there, but as to how practical it is another matter. What I think is happening now is that the political parties are testing ideas. We shouldn't be surprised if some of the things they've gone around saying did not find their way into the documented manifestos. Because I see it as testing the waters, looking at people's reaction. If it is bought, then we cement it with the manifesto promises. So it is not very clear, but considering the kind of voter population we have in this country, it would have a role to play, in my view, without any evidence. It would have a role to play, because a lot of people may not ask the why and the how. They are interested in saying that I am associated with this political party. This is what the political party said it was going to do. I am in the party's t-shirt, and that's it. It is only few discerning people, highly educated, who do analysis to be able to establish whether or not the thing can be implemented. So
the highly educated ones are the ones who look for manifestos.
Definitely, whether oral or written, they may want to be sure so that they can hold.
But they are not in the majority.
They are not in the majority, because whether we like it or not, both political parties has a certain catchment area, a certain percentage of the vote who would vote whether there is manifesto. Or
so would you say that these promises or the manifestos are the deciding factor in every election, Dr. Franklin Odro?
Well, even that, I'm not too sure. Even if the small 20%, we even
read it.
we even read it and we make that to inform us. I mean, I do agree in principle with my senior Dr. Odro Osai about the constant, almost permanent voter base for the two parties, right? What the so-called stronghold, where they are likely to get, and I'm not too sure of the 40%, but maybe between 35 and 40 votes, which they will always get. And so we are living with the 25% vote, and increasingly those are also becoming what we know, we getting to know in Ghana, the swing region. So Greater Accra, Central,
and
Western, and Brownful, so the question will be, what have been the factors that have informed these regions becoming swing?
Tell me, what have been the factors?
There's so many of them.
Such as?
So many of them. I mean, ethnic affiliation.
Absolutely.
Ethnic affiliation is one. Certain.
Why ethnic affiliation?
Well, look, this person comes from, this leader, this kind of presidential candidate comes from our region. And so I feel safe voting for this person, rather than looking at the issues and the policies and the programs that this person is bringing. There's element of security and safetyness. In fact, one of the things that my own analysis suggests to me about block voting and ethnic voting is about security, about safety. That we think we feel safer under this person, rather than looking at whether this person is really delivering the kind of goods that you want. So I think ethnicity is a factor, but there are also micro level indicators, factors. So issues, if you took Greater Accra region, for instance, some of the things that in our own analysis may have affected the MPP in 2008 were even land issues, right? Land issues where there were arguments or perception that they were grabbing land for themselves. So these are little other things that can mobilize people against a regime without necessarily looking at the manifestos and programs and so on. So, but I think increasingly also, though not in a very significant way, we are also beginning to see discerning Ghanaians who are asking the right questions, who are asking the questions as to how can I secure a loan in a very low level interest rate so that I can do business. So they are looking at who is going to help stabilize the macro economy so that I can, if I'm a businessman, I can do business. People are asking, how can I have healthcare? You are a presenter, and you discuss some of these issues about education, where people call in and express concern about the quality of education that we experience, about quality of healthcare. So increasingly, we are interrogating some of those issues. The question is, will those issues that we all interrogate inform our mind when we get to the ballot box?
You have that answer.
I don't have that answer.
You have that answer, Dr. Baule?
So you see, increasingly, the politician is getting very confident and comfortable.
Why?
Because they know that in the end, you and I will not look at what they have said, what they have put in their manifesto, but we are going to vote based on whether or not we come from the same region with them. And they know, for example, that Volta region will vote en bloc, Ashanti region will vote en bloc. Therefore, so you see that more and more, the politician is getting confident to be able to do away with us in terms of our concerns. And that is creating another problem. What it creates is that a lot of people who hitherto would have been discerning, majority of that small number are gradually also getting squeezed out of their discernment.
Good.
In other words, you would find a lot of young people who would have asked critical questions. He's been out of school for 5 years, no job, and he's looking for how to eat. So the next thing he's going to do.
Then your comment that the politicians are not promising big enough doesn't come in.
No. What I said was about the fact that what they anticipate to do. For example, if we gave power to MPP or gave power to NDC, as a person, would I be satisfied with the few things they have said? No. I want to see big things.
Yes, but if at the end of the day,
yes,
people's decisions are not influenced by the things they say, then
you
do not have to promise
so
big.
Because
they need
the problem is that
feed on their usual ethnicities and all those things to win elections.
For example, I would have a huge problem accepting that if MPP came to power and gave one dam, one village, or one village, one dam, or 1 million, they would have hit the moon with what they want to do.
I'll go back to you. This program is sponsored by TV3 Network Limited with support from Star Ghana. Star Ghana, strengthening transparency, accountability, and responsiveness. You're also listening to us live on 3FM right here in Accra, 92.7 with me, Winston. This evening we're looking at the feasibility and the impact of the promises on the campaign, trail. And we've been joined by Dr. Franklin Odro, who is with the CDD Ghana, Dr. Justice Baule of the University of Ghana Business School, and Dr. Odrosai with the Institute of Local Government Studies. So let's get to the feasibility of these promises. Of course, we've heard lots of promises, which Dr. Baule says they are not big enough. Well, we're going to get into the feasibility of those promises, and I would want to start off with you. So the president has made a promise. Now, there's a caveat to it, though. It says, as we move on, and I just would want to read that particular bit, because I mean, there's a quote attributed to the president. It says, I wish to assure you that as Ghana's GDP continues to grow and as we continue to make wealth, we will continue to make tertiary education progressively free so that you pay less fees and code. And already some have started questioning. They say, this is a country where we are really grappling with some subsidies. You've heard of CHAS coming out to say, give us our money. We're told, okay, that those monies have been paid. You've heard teacher trainees, complaining in the past. Nurses trainees are also complaining. And I've heard some saying that our votes will be tied to the restoration of our nurses trainee. Do we have what it takes to progressively make tertiary education free in the next 4 years?
I'm happy that you added that next 4 years. So
yes.
I was going to ask, within what context was the president speaking? Was he speaking within the next 4 year that he intends, or his
because he has, if voted into office,
yes,
it's 4 more years.
Yes, 4 more years. That's the point. So to make education progressively free in the next 4 more years, for me, is a non-starter, because I know it will not be done, or it cannot be done.
Why do you think it cannot be done?
Well, because I say that using the president's own argument, the president has argued about why we should not make even the SHS, I have difficulties pronouncing those things, senior high, free, because we don't have the money.
Now progressively, they absorbed some fees from day students. Now we're told that boarding students,
so if
20,000 boarders from deprived areas,
so if
I were boarding fees. So
if I heard the president speak about the fact that in the next 4 years we are going to be making senior high free, or even more progressively free, I will believe him more than jumping to tertiary education. You
said we should be making bigger promises.
No, I understand. The point that I made is that we need to see. That's what I made reference to this document that says that in 4 years we can achieve so much. So if a political party comes to make one promise, it can be a big promise. It might be difficult to, and that's what I said, that what we should interrogate will be how are we going to finance that, how are we going to roll that out, and all of that. But I will certainly want to see more done for Ghana in 4 years.
Have you interrogated that before coming to the conclusion that you say is a non-starter?
Yeah, for tertiary education.
Yes.
Yeah, because the president has told us in the previous election that it was not possible for us to have free HSS.
He's doing it now.
Well, so that's the point. So he started that one. Why wouldn't he finish that? Listen, the president said they were going to have 200 community day schools. And I thought that it was so paltry to say that for 4 years, even for 200 schools, we couldn't finish. That's what I said. Let's interrogate it.
There are various stages of construction.
Yes, let's finish them. So that's what I said.
He says we'll finish them in the second term.
That takes me to my actual beef with promises. And when I say we are not making, or we are not receiving enough promises, or big enough promises, I'm looking at if Ghana has to progress at this rate, can we ever catch up with any developing, or can we develop in the way that we want?
You doubt the promises they make.
Yeah, they should make more. And when they make
doubt the ones they are making already. So why do they make more?
Because why I doubt them is that, one, we steal too much of the money that we generate that is going to be used to make those ones. Say, of course, read the Auditor General's report annually and you will weep for Ghana. See how much money goes to the district assemblies and how much of that money gets stolen. Not you want to qualify it and say misappropriation and whatever. They are physical theft. No.
So go for the politically correct language, mismanaged.
Well, that's if you want to be politically correct, because when politicians are taking the money, they are not politically correct. They do, and they will come out and defend their own rot, and they will defend that. If it is them, they will fight against it if it is the other. So you will hear MPP vehemently opposing everything, including the presidential fraud, right? But let them be the ones to be in power. You will hear them defend everything vehemently. So my point is that Ghana can accomplish more if we have politicians who say they would fight corruption and make sure all the money that comes stays into the kitty. Two, that look, the development partners are always looking to see something big, something nice, so they will support us. But they won't give you money to squander. They won't give you money to fly football fans to South Africa to go and watch TV football on screens. They won't do that. They won't give you money to waste. They won't give you money to distribute to your friends. They won't do that. Development partners would. You see what happened to the Millennium Challenge project, Millennium project? You see how much money the US put in? The US will put in more if they see a viable project. If they see this would make progress, they will put in more money. That is why I say we are not making enough promises. We should have a system. Political parties should come out with a 10-point plan that tells us on each aspect of our economy how they are the things.
So 10-point agenda.
Exactly. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Those things that are big, that tell us how much money we are going to be spending and how we are going to raise that money. That is what policy. Will you appoint anybody to head your company if that person cannot raise funds, if the person cannot generate money to run that company? Will you? I will not appoint anybody like that.
You don't trust politicians, do you?
Well, it's not me. It's they.
Do you trust them?
I don't think it's me.
Who've made themselves not to be trusted.
Yes, I mean sometimes.
So do you trust them?
No, I don't. Honestly, I don't.
Let me get to you, Dr. Franklin Odro. So we're looking at the feasibility of the promise. I don't know whether you want to look at the progressively free tertiary education, or you want to go on to a one constituency, $1 million, or one dam, one village policy.
I think using the education promise, and many others that the parties have put across, the thing that is missing, and I think that's the fundamental problem, and I think that's what my colleague Justice was trying to address. What is the vision of Ghana? What do we want? I don't know. No, I just don't know, because at some point, I remember when I was in the university, we introduced cost sharing. Government trying to wean itself from tertiary education. And increasingly,
we fought it.
We fought it. Yes,
we fought it. We virtually fought it.
And they said, okay, no, you have to pay. And today we are back and say we want to make it free. So what
progressively free, so you pay less.
That's one point. So that's one from one group. Is that the same vision for the MPP, PPP? And so if assuming NDC won and President Mahama started that policy, and the next 4 years PPP won, MPP won, would they reverse it? Would they be the same? I mean, what is the vision? What do we want to do in our healthcare, education, whatever?
Of course, this is where the National Development Plan
and that is why sometimes these promises that are made become empty, and you could see that these things cannot, see the day of the light, because we don't seem to know where we want to go or the direction we want to go, and therefore we are just making out of. So, for instance, if a dam, one village, one dam is the issue, and if it's contextualized within mechanizing or modernization of agriculture, what is the agenda?
So somebody would want to find out, for instance. You go on and I'll ask you the question.
The process of achieving that will be different between. That's what ideologies but where we want to go, if our mission is to strengthen primary, basic and secondary education, and there's the collective view of Ghana, that's what we want to see all the parties speak to, how they want to achieve that. But today we are hearing strengthen basic education, and then we come to tertiary education when our resources are not even that much.
Now, Dr. Odrosai, should the National Development Planning Commission come out and tell us, for instance, based on where they've reached so far, whether some of these promises are in sync with a 40-year development plan?
Yeah, they should be able to do that, but I'm also looking at to the extent to which it will bound the political parties, because as of now they are not yet done with the 40-year development plan, and views, there are views around that we should make sure that this binds all political parties. Until that is done, it will be extremely difficult. And remember, it is at the development stage, and people are seeing it to be developed by a particular political party. So the political buy-in is very important. They can present where they are up as of now, but whether or not it will influence the manifestos is another matter. Already, sections of the political parties have expressed their intention that they are not going to allow themselves to be bound by that. Already, it is out there. So what I would say is that I want to agree with my colleague that we should, as a nation, come out with a vision, a 10-point plan vision. This is where we want to go. All political parties fit into it. If we agree,
there's a talk of a 40-year plan, isn't there?
The 40-year plan is yet to be developed.
Yes.
Political buy-in is very important. It's binding on political parties is very important. And we should also make sure that we don't push our own individual selfish agendas into the 40-year development plan. So all these things are important. But then at what point in time do we say that these are the plans or the vision of Ghana working towards maybe the AU agenda or the sustainable development goals? When we have that global standard as our standard and all political parties work up to that one, then you can create a common platform and say that come let us debate. Sustainable Development Goal 1. What do you intend to implement and how do you want to do it? Party A, tell us what you want to do. Party B, then you have a uniform basis to assess the political party.
Well, there was a forum like that. There was a forum like that recently, organized by one of the civil society organizations, and the political parties sent representatives in there to, tell Ghanaians how they intended implementing, the various SDGs. But, Dr. Odosai, finally on this bit, what about the one dam, one village policy? What's your take? Is that a feasible plan?
See, some of them are feasible. Let me look at the education one, for instance.
You're focusing on the education.
Yeah, we are focusing on the education.
Nobody's focusing on the one dam, one village. You think it's a non-starter?
It is not as if it's a non-starter. But then, if it is based on empirical research, as I would always say, then it is doable. But if it is not based on empirical research, I'm sorry to say that it can't be implemented. But in the case of education, I think it is just below the belt, in my view, because we have liberalized the educational sector, especially the tertiary educational sector. We have these private sectors operating. We have private universities charging fees. We have some of our good lecturers from the public institutions lecturing in these private universities. Lecturers' allowances are not being paid. And we said that we are progressively going to reduce fees. Where are we going to get the money to pay the lecturers? What's going to happen to our universities? Already, when the cost-sharing issue came, people fought and the government said, no, we'll continue. We'll continue and make sure that students paid fees. What has changed? What has changed? Now we have discontinued nursing allowances, we have discontinued teacher training allowances, and we said we are going to do progressively free.
There's a talk of restoring the nurses allowance.
Well, if you just heard the president, he said even if you
lose, that's the teachers.
Oh, the teachers,
yes,
is why he said, I'm a teacher, and because of that, I'm not happy. Because but for teacher training allowance, I will not be sitting here because from O level I couldn't buy a form to go to sixth form. But for that,
he says you can assess a loan. You can assess a loan and pay later.
Tertiary institutions can attest.
Exactly, you can
but
get a loan.
Let me just have my take on the one dam.
Do.
If you go to the north, there are a number of dams. We don't have all of them. We don't have them everywhere. I would wish that, because when I go there when it rains, and I'm from the north, so I speak passionately because of also where I come from. I wish that we had, every community had a dam. I'm not sure that it is the ideal to have every village having a dam. Is it possible to have clusters of villages having a dam? But more to the point is how these dams operationalize. I told you, I drive past a village that has a dam. Somebody is using a bucket to fetch water, to water a plant. How many of those plants can he water?
Because the critics argue that if you construct one dam for each village, there's a tendency of it drying up unless you go for an underground dam where you say that, okay, in this case, it's not going to dry, but that is very expensive. Are we prepared to pump it?
Well, it depends on how you do it. The truth is that my village where I was born, there is the people, they call that dam caterpillar, because the people just rented a caterpillar and it's excavated some part of it. That's where they draw their water from. That's where they drink throughout the year. And I think that it's possible to do dams. I am just waiting to see if MPP would actualize the process of damming. It's not a problem of digging a hole and getting water collected. It is also how that water gets into the farm, and how that the people there get to be able to transport that what they produce and all of that. So there is a value chain system that we must address, and that's what I'm looking to see. So one dam, one village, one dam would be allowed, and I wish to see more promises in that regard. You know, what we can do to cotton, what we can do to rice farming, what we can do to tomato, what we can do to all of that, arising out of those. But if we put a dam there, will we ask the women to go use buckets to fetch the water? And that is what I want to see MPP roll out. And for all the promises that the politicians are making, I want to see them roll them out. And please tell if you're watching us, please roll out more promises, because it will get to a time when Ghanaians will stand up and ask you and hold
but
you
you
to
say
those
you don't
promises.
trust them.
Well, so far, I am hoping that one day we can get that quote-unquote revolution, not the Rawlings type, but the revolution that will let me refrain from voting for you because you have refused to live your own word.
Okay. We need to be wrapping up, and I need to start off with you, Dr. Franklin Odro. Do you think there's been some decency on the campaign platform finally?
Well, I mean, if I'm to respond to this by looking at what the Media Foundation for West Africa has been doing, then the report that we are hearing is that it's not a good. We are not seeing what we want to see. I think it's still going to be a bit nasty as we approach December 7th. I think that we will hear more of indecent language. I would think that politicians will veer off policy issues and do some personal attacks, and there will be occasions that people will probably invoke ethnic relations. All of those non-democratic issues will come to play, because but we need to put in a system to check those things, and then put sanctions and name and shame those politicians who do that.
Finally, Dr. Baule, are the promises helping us to focus on issues rather than the things that do not matter?
I think they should. So far, I don't think that has helped out a lot. You occasionally hear them veer into the gutters and all of that. But I think that elections are not battles of insult. They are battles of ideas. People want to be able to see in the end how they will be better off. People want to see how they can pay their kids' school fees. Students want to see how they can finish school and get jobs. People want to see how the roads will be freer, so they won't drive in traffic for God knows how long, and all of that. So those are the kind of things we are willing to see politicians debate and all of that. They should know that if you tell somebody, for example, that he is this kind of person or he has this kind of thing, there might be several other people who have the same kind of thing. You don't insult somebody and hoping that people who are listening to you are going to vote. Okay. So let them get out of those. Let them discuss ideas. So in the end, we will insult them by saying that your big head is full of ideas. Then that's where we will be going, rather than telling people of going into the gutters with insults.
Okay, so let me see whether Dr. Odro's big head is full of ideas.
Well, mine is full of ideas.
Absolutely.
Now, what I would say is that we should stop the personality attacks and then do issue-based campaigning. That's what Ghanaians are expecting. They should know that they are role models for people. The future of Ghana is in their hands.
Absolutely.
Corporate Ghana, we are all looking at them. We want to see them developing the country. The next 5, 10, 15 years, we want to see Ghana being developed under their leadership. We expect nothing than higher performance and issue-based campaigning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eric Odrosai, Dean of Graduate Studies of the Institute of Local Government Studies, and of course, Dr. Justice Baule, who is Senior Lecturer and Head of the Department of Public Administration and Health Services Management at the University of Ghana Business School, and of course, Dr. Franklin Odro, Deputy Director and Head of Research, CDD Ghana. And of course, thank you so much, cherished viewers,